Welcome. We are back. Poetry of Immigrants. We're so glad you're with us. And I hope you like the intro music because we're going to do a little calypso and poetry, but pretty much we're going to travel the world. May is for mayhem.
Sounds good to me.
Does it?
Familiar territory.
Familiar. And M is also for mysticism. So we're going to kind of transform and elevate the setting in order to get some larger ideas across. Thank you for coming, Gemma, my reliable co-host.
You're welcome.
And if I'm not here, you're here. We're so glad to have an audience, and things are happening on the immigrant front. I'd like to start with a poem that ties back to our two sessions of 15 and 16, very meaningful about Palestinian poetry, and also the Palestine Museum, U.S., which recently opened in April. So this is a kind of finishing of the sentiments, and it also opens up the question of transformative life through poetry. This is probably the most famous Palestinian poet of the 20th century, Mahmoud Darwish. It's from The Butterfly's Burden, aptly named. And this poem is titled, In Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, and I mean within the ancient walls, I walk from one epoch to another without a memory to guide me. The prophets over there are sharing the history of the holy, ascending to heaven and returning less discouraged and melancholy, because love and peace are holy and are coming to town. I was walking down a slope and thinking to myself, how do the narrators disagree over what light said about a stone? Is it from a dimly lit stone that wars flare up? I walk in my sleep, I stare in my sleep, I see no one behind me. I see no one ahead of me. All this light is for me. I see all this light. I walk, I become lighter, I fly, then I become another, transfigured. Words sprout like grass from Isaiah's messenger mouth. Quote, if you don't believe, you won't be safe, end quote. I walk as if I were another, and my wound a white biblical rose, and my hands like two doves on the cross hovering and carrying the earth. I don't walk, I fly, I become another, transfigured. No place and no time. So who am I? I am no I in ascension's presence. But I think to myself, alone, the Prophet Muhammad spoke classical Arabic. And then what? Then what? A woman soldier shouted, is that you again? Didn't I kill you? I said, you killed me. And I forgot, like you, to die. What a journey interiorly through spirit in the middle of the streets of Jerusalem where all the religions come together. And I think his message is suggesting that normally, with all these wonderful religions here claiming the territory, this would be an elevated spiritually a condition. But the question then becomes, why are we warring with each other over these holy spaces and sepulchres? Why isn't peace a natural event? So the poet has to lift above it all spiritually, to rise like doves and in a sense look down. And the one biographical note which is so interesting is that Mahmoud's first love was an Israeli girl, who joined the dance company of the Israeli army, and they had a 2-3 year affair. And then the contrast of that, seeing her later as a member of the army, and that's the reference here. A woman soldier shouted, "Is that you again? Didn't I kill you?" Oh my, that is such a good example of what poets can do for us, to take us out of the maelstrom in the moment and to see with really spiritual and fully human eyes.
It's very interesting that that was the first poem you chose to read, and we do this a lot, this little bits of kismet that we have. I found a poem, it's a very old poem, and it is about the poet's struggle to find transcendence, in this case through nature, but he's struggling with it and he doesn't quite make it. But it's beautifully, beautifully written, and I found it from the part of the line that is repeated, "What man has made of man," and it's by William Wordsworth.
Oh, a
Lines
Wordsworth
written in early spring. It was an early Wordsworth, and it was written in 1779, and I looked historically to see what was going on in Britain then that might have prompted this, and there, Britain was being very rough on the colonials, especially in Africa at the time, the Zanzibar War and the a war with the Zulus. So he may have been thinking about that, but I'll just read the poem. I heard 1,000 blended notes while in a grove I sate reclined, and in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Through primrose tufts and that sweet bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed to thrill of pleasure. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man?
Wow. Thank you for the synchronicity of that, Gemma. That's exactly where we are today. In current news, too. Mm-hmm. How do we survive this? And the poets are our guides. That's really a wonderful intro to The Way of Life by Lao Tzu. Have you read him?
Not recently, but I have. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was at breakfast this morning at the Brownstone in Guilford, and Mary, who's coming with her 9-year-old daughter for children's play in July for our show, who's already composing a poem for the show.
Oh, wonderful.
Said, "Oh, but how have you seen Robert Dyer's translations and guide to Lao Tzu?"
No,
I said,
haven't.
"Doing." Did I need that? This just came into the library. And I think we'll read Marilyn in a minute, but I just want to open, since you brought us to the place of special spiritual awareness through Wordsworth's poem to the message of Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, born in 609 BC, he's a 6th century down through with Confucius, 550, 600 down to 550. And he promoted the way. He said, don't codify this. Don't even write it down. Don't corrupt it. It is the way. I thought that's a fascinating stance. And Confucius was saying, take down these notes. What a contrast between the two of them. So, the way of life, I guess it satisfies my own searching at 76. What is all this about daily on the news? Can't we just rise above it? Can't we just go to a poet who can save us, help us find our way? His first one. And they were written down on tablets, according to some of the background. This is translated by Witter Bynner. He's an American poet that I got fascinated into. 1910, 1920, really, really literary guy. Editor at a lot of the magazines. And he went to China for 5 years and collaborated with a fellow. So this is his version, translated by Witter Bynner. The way of life according to Lao Tzu. Number one, they're like 5,000 words broken up into 55 meditations, 70 meditations. They look like sonnets. Mm-hmm. And they have calligraphy. And there's our Chinese calligraphy.
Yes.
Which kind of has a power of its own, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Existence is beyond the power of words to define. Terms may be used, but are none of them absolute. In the beginning of heaven and earth, there were no words. Words came out of the womb of matter. And whether a man dispassionately sees to the core of life or passionately sees the surface, the core and the surface are the same, are essentially the same, words making them seem different, only to express appearance. If name be needed, wonder names them both, from wonder into wonder. Existence opens. It's a kind of invitation.
And how interesting that it's the opposite of the Western biblical. In the beginning was the Word.
I know.
It's opposite.
And the Word was made flesh. Yeah. And this is, no.
There were no words.
No
very,
words,
very
please.
Interesting, yeah.
Let's go back into, as you point out with Wordsworth, the way becomes a way of being, not just thinking, and not thinking in words necessarily, but at the end of his 70, so the reader will notice, fortitude, forbearance in life's experiences, patience, the Oriental view of life. And also, he seems to be saying, don't come with me. Find your own path, your answers. The opposite. I loved that contrast. It's just built in. But more primarily, the message seems to be between the lines, live more naturally, live in concert, in harmony with nature. He's a poet, because this one about water and man is the perfect analog, image, metaphor. Number two, people, through finding something beautiful, think something else unbeautiful. Through finding one man fit, judge another unfit. Life and death, though stemming from each other, seem to conflict as stages of change. Difficult and easy as phases of achievement, long and short as measures of contrast, high and low as degrees of relation. But since the varying of tones gives music to a voice, and what is the was of what shall be, I love that. And what is the was of what shall be. The sanest man sets up no deed, lays down no law, takes everything that happens as it comes, as something to animate, not to appropriate, to earn, not to own, to accept naturally without self-importance. If you never assume importance, you never lose it. Oh, this is opening up, isn't it? To a refreshing contrast to the grasping, greedy, contemporary scene.
Right. It's true.
No wonder why people are returning to Lao Tzu. Of course, his famous quote is, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And the message seems to be, ooh, this journey is beckoning. This might be worth it. But I have to surrender, let go, change, transform, elevate, respect nature. Number 3, it is better not to make merit a matter of reward, lest people conspire and contend, not to pile up rich belongings, lest they rob, not to excite by display, lest they covet. A sound leader's aim is to fill and open people's hearts and fill their stomachs, calm their wills, brace their bones, and so to clarify their thoughts and cleanse their needs, that no cunning meddler could touch them without being forced, without constraint or strain. Good government comes of itself. Ooh. Ooh. I've been living on the wrong hemisphere or the wrong planet or something.
I think it's the whole wrong planet because the other hemisphere doesn't seem to be anymore.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, but I won't go there right now.
So he seems to have gone there.
Uh-huh.
He seems to have gone above it, but without any creed or church or codification, just by example. That sounds Oriental to you?
Well, I don't know if it's
Is it
particularly
Buddhism
Asian.
too?
Yeah, it could be certain religious
Is it
influences.
Zen? Let's play for a minute with the old quote. The unexamined life is not worth living. I say, the examined life is not worth living. No?
I think the over-examined life can be what's the word? Just paralyzing.
Paralyzing, yeah.
You can't go forward if you're always examining.
Thank you for restraining me.
No.
I don't want to lose my
But I understand your
my Occidental orientation.
Right. I think a certain amount of examination is a good thing. But another thing that I think he's saying there is beware of false syllogisms, which whether you're over-examining or not examining at all, you don't want to be, because one is good, the other isn't bad, and vice versa.
Exactly. What a different conception of reality. And somehow nature, as Wordsworthian, what a man to have that grounding, in that appreciation of nature's messages. Mm-hmm. And that one was such a good choice for Wordsworth. Every time I read Wordsworth, it's like a door opening. Wait a minute, step back. And of course, his definition of poetry, maybe correctly or spuriously attributed, is like something about the time you take to remove yourself from that passionate encounter or feeling or an emotion and to recollect it in tranquility. What an interesting definition of poetry. Again, Occidental, not Oriental, maybe, but still fascinating to me. There's that maybe Zen difference. I don't know. I don't want to throw terms around that too loosely.
Right. I'm not a...
But it's fascinating to disorient myself for a minute,
Right.
to kind of say, where have you been? That's a great eureka moment, I think. So now I have Dyer, is it? Robert Dyer, the guru who puts out all those philosophy books and TV shows.
Maybe Richard Dyer?
Richard Dyer.
Richard Dyer.
Thank you. Yeah. Richard Dyer is in the library in Guilford, she said. So go. Next step.
Okay.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I have one more,
Okay.
which is the poet at his best. The Way of Life, according to Lao Tzu, number 8. And this is sort of an answer, maybe, to Wordsworth's poem that you just read. Mm-hmm. Man at his best, like water, serves as he goes along. Like water, he seeks his own level, the common level of life. Loves living close to the earth, living clear down in his heart. Loves kinship with his neighbors, the pick of words that tell the truth, the even tenor of a well-run state, the fair profit of able dealing, the right timing of useful deeds, and for blocking no one's way, no one blames him. Wow. Mm-hmm. Water seeks its own level. This is a totally alien philosophy and imagery in a way, although the door through Wordsworth is an easy one now.
Okay, well, I have a poem that talks about water and the symbolism of water and flowing.
Let me give you a little intro. We did that April water symbolism. Mm-hmm. April is the cruelest month.
Right.
And water as a symbol of spirituality and, of course, of life, basically, the basic need of life.
Did I read the poem then about?
No.
Okay, well, this one...
synchronicity?
This is called How to Listen.
Oh.
And it's personal experience. About my granddaughter when she was about 4, 3.5, 4. This bright being who is the mine of mine is slingshot full tilt toward the joy of each naming I offer in the forest path. Mm. A suggestion ignored as she scrambles from brightness to brightness. These are wood geraniums, those purple trilliums, violets, Dutchman's breeches. One identification a spur toward the next. This one is Jack in the pulpit. If you carefully lift the striped hooded petal, you can find Jack hiding inside. Irresistibly challenged, she lights from Jack to Jack. Her little fingers attempt to imitate my delicate reveal without bruising the flower. Each time she cautions herself, then congratulates her own extravagant gentleness. At the brink of a brook, I snatch at her waistband as she heaves a sizable rock, her whole self caught in the trajectory. For all rocks and sticks in reach, this process is rewarded with a lush plunk and upspray as my grip slips further. I need to buy a rest here and draw her onto my lap. A friend of mine once told me, if we can be very quiet and still, we can listen to the brook, and we might be able to figure out what it is telling us. Can you hear it? It is the first time thoughts of him surfaced since we came here. The pure joy of her being, the only happiness that does not feel disloyal to this fresh loss and complicated grief. Her thrumming heart beneath my laced fingertips, all other movements in check. Her body is first a pantomime, then, by pure intent, a tiny paragon of quiet and still. Quiet and still. Then her blonde brows draw down and together, her eyelids flicker, her twin receptors of sound. Well, Gammy, I think what it's telling us is, I'm just gonna try to keep on flowing.
Oh, what a loving grandmother you are. And please
And
say
what
that.
great advice.
Oh, yeah.
Just try to keep on flowing. And that's the water imagery. That's
Oh.
the acceptance. That's the transcendence.
It is all at once in a child's innocence, as William Blake would say. How wonderful, the songs of innocence. That's a song of innocence. I love your sound imagery. Yeah. The lush plunk. Oh, could you read that for July?
Sure, I could read it again.
Oh, that's so good because it's...
But whoever comes the children may have so many poems of their own, we hope that,
Yeah, but at least one you could read.
Okay.
And that one is such a beauty because of the relationship between Grandma and... Oh, what a delight. We're going to take a 3-minute break. We're also delighted with the service announcements because they're so, well, let's say they're so transcendent. We're good.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Alvin and the Chipmunks want to remind you, bacteria can hide in food and make you ill.
Wow.
But you can keep bacteria from ruining your day with 4 simple steps. Clean.
I'm waiting for the rinse cycle.
Separate. Cook.
Fire in the hole!
And chill.
We chipmunks are notoriously tidy.
Check your steps. The road trip to food safety starts at foodsafety.gov.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back. Glad to see you. We are missing Jim Paradis today. He's our guitarist and a poet in his own right. What a mystical guy. He's put out 3 or 4 CDs that are just so heartwarming, all about family and friends.
Hopefully he'll be back soon.
He will. Oh, he loves coming. But he had a meeting come up and it took him away. But we're here and we're looking forward to continuing our journey. So we have this artwork here. This is by a gentleman who was walking on the street in Madison one day, and we just struck up a conversation. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm just here from China now for 3 weeks, a summer break. I teach over there, and I really love what I do. I teach poetry over there and painting." And it sounds as if he spent a lifetime over there, but fully in the vernacular of English and happy to be here for his 3 weeks. And we struck up a friendship. And I said, "Oh, I've got a few books that I'd like to give you. You could take over there, stories from the other side. Maybe share some writing from English students, American students." He says, "Well, I got something for you." And this is a beautiful artwork that he just does over and over and over. I wish I could translate. I can't, not even one word, but it's a work of art, and have it on my wall at home. So we're back in China, but it's 2,500 years later. And
Marilyn Chen, who was born in 1955. Calling herself a Chinese-American poet, Marilyn Chin has said that her poetry, quote, both laments and celebrates my hyphenated identity, unquote. How I Got That Name, for example, tells how her father changed her name from Mei Ling to Marilyn for the iconic American movie star Marilyn Monroe. And I will read the first part of that poem, and Frank will read the second half.
Great. How I Got That Name. Isn't that great?
How I Got That Name, an essay on assimilation. I am Marilyn Mei Ling Chin. Oh, how I love the resoluteness of that first person singular, followed by that stalwart indicative of be without the uncertain ing of becoming. Of course, the name had been changed somewhere between Angel Island and the sea, where my father, the paper person in the late 1950s, was obsessed by a blonde shell blonde transliterated Mei Ling to Marilyn. And of course, a paper person was a person who were Chinese immigrants who used false papers to claim that they were sons of American citizens.
So they could get in.
Yeah, so they can get into the country. And nobody dared question his initial impulse. For we all know lust drove men to greatness, not goodness, not decency. And there I was, a wayward pink baby, named after some tragic white woman swollen with gin and Nembutal.
Wow.
My mother couldn't pronounce the R, so she dubbed me #1 female offshoot for brevity. Henceforth, she will live and die in sublime ignorance, flanked by loving children and the kitchen deity. While my father dithers, a tomcat in Hong Kong trash, a gambler, a petty thug, who bought a chain of chop suey joints in Piss River, Oregon, with bootlegged Gucci cash. Nobody dared question his integrity, given his niece, devout daughters, and his bright, industrious sons, as if filial piety were the standard by which all earthly men were measured.
Oh, how trustworthy our daughters, how thrifty our sons, how we've managed to fool the experts in education, statistics, and demography. We're not very creative, but not adverse to rote learning. Indeed, they can use us, but the model minority, quote unquote, is a tease. We know you are watching now, so we refuse to give you any. Oh, bamboo shoots, the further west we go, we'll hit east. The deeper down we dig, we'll find China. History has turned its stomach on a black, polluted beach where life doesn't hinge on the red wheelbarrow. But whether or not our new lover is the final episode of Santa Barbara, we'll lean over a scented candle and call us a bitch. Oh God, where have we gone wrong? We have no inner resources. Then, one redolent spring morning, the great patriarch Chin peered down from his kiosk in heaven and saw that his descendants were ugly. One had a squarish head and a nose without a bridge, another's profile long and knobbed as a gourd, a third, the sad, brutish one, may never marry. And I, his least favorite, quote, not quite boiled, not quite cooked, unquote, a plump pomfret simmering in my juices, too listless to fight for my people's destiny. Quote, to kill without resistance is not a slaughter, end quote, says the proverb. So I wait for imminent death. The fact that this death is also metaphorical is testament to my lethargy. So, here lies Marilyn Chin, married once, twice to so-and-so, a Lee and a Wong, granddaughter of Jack, the patriarch, and the brooding Sulin Fong, daughter of the virtuous Yet Kun Wong and Gigi Chin, the infamous sister of a dozen, cousin of a million, survived by everybody and forgotten by all. She was neither black nor white, neither cherished nor vanquished, just another squatter in her own bamboo grove, minding her poetry. When one day heaven was unmerciful, and a chasm opened where she stood, like the jowls of a mighty white whale or the jaws of a metaphysical Godzilla. It swallowed her whole. She did not flinch nor writhe, nor fret about the afterlife, but stayed, solid as wood, happily a little gnawed, tattered, mesmerized by all that was lavished upon her and all that was taken away. That's a hyphenated poem. That's China and America fused. And those notes and references are so interesting. I mean, the white whale, Godzilla. How wonderful she uses that ironic tone of voice to search for her own identity in the middle of the poem. Right. Oh, what a new discovery for me. Marilyn Chin, born 1955. Just an editorial comment. Although humorous and unpretentious, Chin's poetry is fundamentally serious, considering the question, what is American about American poetry? She has written that her work is seeped with the themes and travails of exile, loss, and assimilation. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about immigrants who come to America, either that first generation or even twice removed. The culture, the history is in the DNA, and the search for identity is always there. And we have another poet. If we can jump on our magic carpet and go from China across the Solomon Islands right here and come up from Antarctica to Cuba. But before we do that, let's go dive into prison poetry.
Okay. Back and forth, back and forth.
Back and forth. Isn't it wonderful what poets can do? They jump on their carpet, and even when they get tired of their carpet, they take off in a rocket ship and head out to Pluto, and then when they're ready, they come back. I had gotten, meanwhile, a mailing, the Rainshadow Review, which I follow. And this is the most wonderful collection of prison poetry and art from the University of Arizona. This has been going on for 14 years, and it's funded by the Lenin Foundation, which is a well-known foundation that really gives a lot of attention to social injustice and tries to ameliorate situations. I know the characters there because I go there every year. And Richard Shelton is kind of the leader and prophet who went into the Arizona prison in Florence nearby Tucson 35 years ago. And he wrote a book, 35 Years Crossing the Yard, about his experiences as a volunteer poet from the University of Arizona. And this is the result, Rainshadow Review. It was earlier, for 10 years, the Walking Rain Review, which is a phenomenon in the Southwest where the rain walks. It doesn't quite ever hit the earth because the air is too dry, but it walks across the desert. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Great image. So this arrived, and I just happened to crack it open, and I was so moved by the recent contributors. Some are lifers. John Dowell's one of them. He wrote Advice from a Lifer. But I'd like to start with what is prison? And maybe you could read Blackbird and the Key?
Sure.
Thanks. John Dowell, so he's a lifer. What is prison? A place for storing human beings in stasis like a giant refrigerator, without compassion like the moon without the stars, or space without stars. It can be a place of growth when we realize how faulty we are, how much damage we've done, the pain causes change. But then what? We're still here, like forgotten apples in your winter grave. It's a stepping stone for politicians, but where do these bloody stone stairs lead? A place to forget and be forgotten, like a rug under which to sweep your dirt. It's a great hungry beast which devours all ties and plans and slowly eats away at memory. There is one light that burns brighter every day. It's the place where I learned to write poetry.
That gets you out of a lot of prisons. But it's interesting to see that the physical prison is one of them.
And yet, that's the freedom. Mm-hmm. Speaking of transcendence and getting on a carpet and flying with nature in his imagination and in his composition. Creative self-expression is so wonderful as a therapy, but also as a freeing agent. But just before you read Blackbird, which is that transcendence moment, that escaping from the four walls and the bars, I want to point out his craft. He lists 7 similes in 9 short stanzas. That's a craft. Oh, it's beautiful. So A prison is a giant refrigerator. It's a space without stars. He skips one, and then he says, it's winter grave for forgotten apples. It's bloody stone stairs. It's a rug under which you sweep your dirt. Look at these similes, building. And it's a great hungry beast. I like that one the best. And then the light comes on, and it's also a place where he's learning to write poetry. That's a really powerful irony for a moment there, because poetry for him is a salvation. Motivates me,
nice.
moves me.
Okay, I'll read Blackbird. Outside my cell window, bleached umber sand shines, and gust-fluttered obsidian shards resolve into a tiny blackbird. I question once again everything. And the second little poem in this page is called The Key. There is nothing like the sound as heavy and bright as the key that locks the door with a man behind it.
Yeah, nothing like the sound. Have you ever visited someone in prison?
I haven't, no.
1970, I worked for Manchester Community College. They said, you're going to do an inmate education program at Summers, maximum security, 2 years. Bring your composition course, but also bring 3 other community college instructors up there. Social science, psychology. It was like the second popular state-funded and federal prison inmate education program in the country. The first was Tucson. And that's so funny because I still remember whang, bam, as the gate came crashing closed behind my, and then in the composition course, there were characters who said, you know, we take hostages here. And the next year they did. Oh, I'm glad I had moved on by then. A Philadelphia policeman had been in there for murder, killed somebody. I mean, those things stayed with me, but the sounds were powerful. The clanging of the door. I was so green and so wet behind the ears that when someone in the class stole the key for the grammar final exam, everybody got 100. Hallelujah. That's all they wanted was recognition. And
the poem itself, though, I mean, the middle 4 words are as heavy and bright, and there's such a dissonance there.
Yeah.
You know, heavy
and bright
is usually dull, and bright is usually light, and it's such a dissonance that you know, like on an elemental level, something is wrong.
How could a sound be bright? Yeah.
You know,
that image is just so whacked out for me. And yet, I seem visually to see a flicker of light rather than hear a bright sound.
Also, the key that locks the door with the man behind it. The first part of that is impersonal. It's not a person that's locking the door. It's a key that's locking a door. So they're object,
Yeah.
and then at the end there's a man at the bottom of all this.
Under it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or behind all this, I should
Or
say.
behind it.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very powerful. Just those few words, they're chosen so in such a strong way.
And also his sounds. The one above, Blackbird, bleached umber sand. What is umber?
Umber is a brown. It's in painting. It's a brown that you mix with many other colors to give them depth, like burnt umber and raw sienna. They're used in oil painting as foundation colors. And umber itself is as a brown, but it's kind of a base brown.
Now I'm seeing the visual, which I missed. And what's obsidian shards? Is obsidian a version of black?
Obsidian is black. Obsidian is a black, very sharp, shiny rock that they used to chip to make points.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Thank you. That's right on, because Gust fluttered obsidian shards. What a poet! Where did he come from? And yet he's a lifer. Just a couple of lines. We have a few minutes left. A couple of lines of John Dowell. He's the poet we just read. Advice from a lifer. Been down 18 years, now even my dreams are of prison, he said with a laugh. Better cut ties, kid. Forget about that girl, how she felt on your lap when she said she wished you had time to go to her place for a siesta. Gotta give up that craving, hunger for some new thing, some reason, new pleasure, taste or crush, a thrill, a plane jump. Make her laugh, get that return look. You're out of the race, kid. Forget those fine legs and round hips. Here, goals are hard to come by and most likely unreachable. Pleasure comes in trace amounts or none at all. Our accounts have been settled. Put your hope on a shelf. Wow. Ouch. And the last line. Someone told me this compound is beautiful at night from the air. All I know is those pretty lights block out all but the brightest stars. Learn to forget, kid. Learn to forget. I thank Richard Shelton, Emeritus Professor and founder of the whole program, for doing for 35 years for these men what probably not much else does for them. Gives them hope, that transcendence, that rising up into a place where life can be born and really the transformation is internal, which is what poetry does.
Right, it's a process that gives you a vehicle for transformation.
The process, and I think that's where we started, which is very uplifting for a mayhem kind of day. Thanks for being here, going around the world so quickly, hanging under the carpet.
You always spin my head, Frank.
I'm glad. But in a good way.
Yeah, I like, to be able to balance. It's like, being on a skateboard or a unicycle or one of those things I never go on anyway, but,
It is. So, last thoughts. How's Poetry Institute going?
Poetry Institute is doing very well, and we always welcome people to come and share a poem with us.
That's so much fun.
Listen to the featured readers. The featured reader for next month will be my husband, Doug Mathewson, and John Masterson. A little bit different. It'll be short fiction with some, poetic riffs in it, and they will be co-readers. We also welcome anyone to come and read a poem of their own.
That is so wonderful.
Third Thursday of every month, Poetry Institute at the Institute Library.
Which is 847 Chapel Street.
In New Haven.
Up those wonderful rickety stairs, hanging on to the old, smelling the books at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, it's a great...
1826!
It's a great space.
It's a great space. Last time, by the way, congratulations. That was more fun than I think the last 8 years I've been going, on and off, because it gave us a kind of foundation and editorial critical stance as poets ourselves to stand and look at other well-known famous poets. And that grounding is so useful from time to time.
Yeah, we're always doing something different.
Always doing something different, yeah. And just the space itself to be there. Thanks, Gemma.
Well, thank you very much.
I look forward to next month, too. So this is a wrap. We didn't get to...
But we'll get to those another time.
Oh, won't that be fun?
Yeah, I'll take it out again and I'll make notes.
Maybe
maybe I can copy the ones I liked.
Oh, that's good. Even better. Shh, on the copyright.
Well, yeah.
But we'll take it out for another 3 weeks. And just to give you a preview of next month, which is coming up June 28th. So please look out. We're doing a Pride show, LGBTQQ, questioning and queer. And the poet laureate of the United States, Richard Blanco, we're going to feature. And I think I'll start off with this poem, Queer Theory According to My Grandmother.
That's a very funny poem.
That's going to be great. That's fun. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next month and the month after that and so on. And Gemma and I are having a lot of fun co-hosting. So thanks again. Look forward to next month. Thanks, Gus.